we're going to show you guys a few clips here pertaining to the labor movement, which has been quite strong, obviously, over recent months, and that's worth celebrating. So we have some clips from More Perfect Union. As always, you guys, if you don't follow them already, I really encourage you to. They do such fantastic work. And we're going to start with a clip of them talking once again about Kroger.
Got like a 35-cent raise in the last 4 years. I live paycheck to paycheck, yes sir. A lot of our workers has been going through hardship, homelessness. They've been behind their rent, $7,000 or so. We have people that we have to feed, like chip in and buy them meals and stuff. So yes, it's pretty bad.
It's very disappointing to know that the CEO made over $20 million, and we have workers here that are struggling every day just to put food on the table and feed their families. It's kind of sad, that a multi-billion-dollar company, doesn't care anymore about their workers.
Yeah, I do struggle to pay my bills. More than anything, I struggle with being able to do anything outside of paying my bills. Like, we get paid enough to survive, but not enough to live. Like, I can't get hurt. I can't get a flat tire, because if I do, I'm screwed. You're giving a third of a week of your time to someone, and you still don't have a place to call home. Like, that's not right.
They are making billions of money. And if they gave something to their real heroes, they are not going to die.
We would like King Soopers to remember who we are and what we do for them. And we'd like them to respect us, protect us, and pay us, because we deserve nothing less than that.
When I first heard the shots, I didn't know where the shooter was in the store. Turned to the left, turned to the right, went down, hid in my cabinet underneath the cheese wrapping station. There was product in there. It was pretty packed. So I hid in a space. It was a very, very small space. I'm still not quite sure how I got my body in there. And that's where I was for an hour. I was rescued by the SWAT team. The bullets are flying everywhere, and they were flying everywhere. That's why that store was closed for so long. The store was just annihilated. So I hid, and I expected to die. I mean, the shooter could have come around the corner at any minute. Shooting happens, and it's like, do I have to go to work tomorrow? I went back to work 5 weeks after the shooting, way too soon, but I couldn't be at home anymore because I was hearing the gunshots. I was having meltdowns in the store, temper tantrums, all kinds of TSD stuff going on, but the union was always there to help me. I didn't want to use up my sick time, so I just kept working through it. I just decided to move on. I got a wonderful opportunity to become a union steward, and I got on the bargaining committee, and I got to be part of this process. And really, honestly, the union has been the thing that has helped me to heal.
Know that if something like that happens again, that the workers will be taken care of.
If they just, don't want to really contribute to the health plan. I mean, again, we're in the middle of a pandemic. A person has to have health care for that reason alone. I mean, we have to be able to take care of our families. We have to be well and healthy to take care of our customers, our communities, our families, and provide revenue for this company.
Yesterday I was watching my union president video, and first time in my life, I come on the road. I don't like politics. I hate politics. I never cast vote in my life. Never. But when I watched the video, I decided to come over here not for money, to moral support and for unity.
So Kroger with, predictable but nauseating behavior towards their employees. Having dealt with a shooting, the insensitive bosses decided you got to use your sick days if you need to miss more time. That's outrageous. That's, that speaks for itself. And I also want to show you guys here a piece. This is also in More Perfect Union. Here we go. Sorry, I'm struggling with StreamYard a little bit today, you guys. This is, again, follow More Perfect Union. You guys are going to see a few more clips here shortly, but this is on their website. Exclusive leaked memo reveals Kroger executives knew for years that most workers live in poverty. Quote, I literally work at a grocery store and can't afford to eat regularly. Explosive new document obtained by More Perfect Union reveals that supermarket giant Kroger has long been aware that its workers can't afford basic necessities and struggle to survive. The internal presentation, titled State of the Associate and marked confidential, warned Kroger executives in 2018 that hundreds of thousands of employees live in poverty and rely on food stamps and other public aid as a result of the company's low pay. Quote, most employees are considered to be living in poverty and need state aid as in food stamps, free school lunch, etc., just to get by, one slide warned. Presentation is prepared with quotes from unnamed employees that foretell the internal labor uprising that would come a few years later. Quote, something is wrong when the people who are actually making this company profitable are the ones deepest in poverty, said one employee quoted from an internal survey. I literally work at a grocery store and can't afford to eat regularly. In short, pay us what we are worth. We know you can afford it. So fantastic piece there describing the barbarity of Kroger. I mean, they've had a number of leaks that demonstrate how greed drives their decision-making process in every imaginable way. And this is not surprising because of that. So as I said, there are a couple of other clips I wanted to show you guys here. We're going to hit a couple of other companies while we're at it. And the obvious underlining point here is please support local labor movements. You guys, if there are strikers in your area, if there are people trying to unionize in your area, please make sure to support them. Do not cross the picket line, etc. So we'll go with Amazon here. More Perfect Union talking about Amazon.
Well, we're having the walkout today to make a stand that we deserve better treatment, better payment, and better staffing. I guess this is just our way of, showing that we had enough and that something has to be done. So.
We're here, Amazon workers in Cicero, delivery station DLN2. We have not received the bonuses that we were promised. There are people here who were hired as permanent workers and then they took their badges away and made them temporary workers. And most importantly, we're here demanding a $5 increase for our wages. And they're in there trying to intimidate us, trying to threaten us, but we're strong, we're staying united. And this is just the beginning of our fight.
Think about it this way, like the managers, how would they like it if they just walked in one day and they're told, well, you might get fired any day now. It's not fair. Like, what's the point of coming to work then, Yeah.
Because blue badges have more different benefits than the white badges.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it comes to like the PTO and the UPT, they'll be like, they go by the point system anyways.
Yeah. Well, great example is my dad passed away 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
And they told me like, oh, we'll give you bereavement. Yeah. When I got my check, I wasn't paid for it. And they're like, oh, it's just, you don't qualify for it.
Yeah, I went to Amazon. They offered us regular employment. Yeah. Meaning like we will be here past the seasonal mark. And as soon as we got with the orientation and everything, we come to find out they take away our permanent badges. So now we have to worry about like our job security past December. That's just too much stress right now, especially during the holidays and COVID coming.
And it's not fair, who wants to, come into work every day with that fear that might be your last day? You know what I mean? Like, we're not gonna, apply just to come work, for a week or two and just call it a day. Like, we applied because we saw a full-time position We saw, they're promising all these benefits. They're promising,
Bonuses.
they promised a bonus that nobody ever got, and it's not fair.
The question is, who is next?
Yes, for the walkout, yes. That's right.
Hell yeah.
You're not asking for much, you're asking for fairness. That's it.
The majority of workers at this warehouse signed the petition for a $3 an hour raise and for safe staffing. They said they were going to look into it and get back to us. They never did. They're not taking us seriously. They're not respecting us.
Like, we're working during the holidays, and the days that we work have increased. Like, we work in six days now, 10 hours apiece, no sleep, and constantly moving back and forth. Like, the last time that I had a chance to have a decent amount of sleep was basically almost a month ago.
So we made our first petition, which is a water petition. We demanded access to clean water the entire time. We demanded for water bottles to be brought into the facility and a right to have a break to get that water, because we were being denied those breaks. And we delivered that petition during a shift, and next thing you know, they brought in waters. So after we realized that the power that we have as workers, we decided to continue fighting for our rights and for better working conditions.
A lot of us worked on Thanksgiving because we were promised double pay for that day. And so people took time away from their family, their friends, etc. because they thought, oh, we'll make some extra money today. When we found out the next Thursday that they didn't actually pay us the double time, we confronted them as a group. Like, they tried to lie to us and say that they were like, oh, we never promised that double time pay. So people were just mad, basically. Like, people were just mad, and we were like, yeah, fuck it. Let's present these demands. We'll give them one more chance to address this stuff. And if they don't address them, we're walking out, because we actually need to do something to affect the only thing they care about, with their numbers. But that's how you can get such cheap shipping. It's not like innovation. They just track you so you can't go to the bathroom. It's not like innovation. They just rip off their workers and commit like what seems to me like wage theft.
By uniting and by taking action, we flip the role on them. This has a serious impact on their morale. This has a serious impact on just how managements even perceive themselves as superior to us. And it has an impact on our own confidence, because all of a sudden we realize that we are powerful. But in order to realize that power, we need to unite, and we need to act, and we need to overcome our fear with courage.
We don't have a organization that will stand up and fight for us within the facility. So this is that. This is us coming together and fighting for what we want and what we need.
We've now decided to rename ourselves Amazonians United Chicagoland, because we're no longer just one facility. We're now a big family, basically, of a big community supporting each other.
They're seeing that what we are doing works, and they're seeing the power that we are building, because the power comes from our unity and from our numbers. The only way that this spreads is by leading the way and by setting an example. And today was a very strong example. And that brings hope. That brings hope and a feeling of connectedness. I think that's the basis for building some real working class power. This is the way that we can begin changing the world.
Fantastic stuff. And I like the way that one of those workers put it. They said something about, this looks like wage theft. This is not innovative. Tracking and surveying your employees is not some form of innovation that makes the process more efficient. What it is exploitation and abuse. So I thought that was a really great way to put it. And related to Amazon here, but on a slightly different note, I wanted to bring you all this story as well. This is in Reuters. I'm sure many of you remember the unionization efforts in Bessemer, Alabama, that unfortunately failed. Amazon so violated labor law in that unionization fight that these workers are actually going to get another chance here. So again, this is Reuters. U.S. Labor Board sets dates for union vote at Amazon warehouse in Alabama. The U.S. National Labor Relations Board said on Tuesday that it will send unionization ballots to workers at an Amazon.com Inc. warehouse in Bessemer, Alabama on February 4th, setting the stage for the next labor contest facing the online retailer. Votes in the mail ballot election, which is a rerun after the NLRB found Amazon interfered last year, will be counted starting on March 28th, according to a notice published by the NLRB. The Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union has been seeking to represent the workers. Scrutiny of working conditions at Amazon has intensified in recent months, with some employees seeking to organize at facilities in New York and Canada. A victory at even one warehouse would be a milestone that labor experts say could invigorate the U.S. labor movement. In a statement, Amazon spokeswoman Barbara Great said, quote, "Our employees have always had the choice of whether or not to join a union." Jesus Christ. And they overwhelmingly chose not to join the union last year, our WDSU last year. We look forward to our team in the warehouse having their voices heard again. Yeah. Boy. You know, when you're reading a public statement and every single word, it's so patently, obviously untrue. That's, I mean, yeah. Amazon did everything in their power, violating labor laws and rules at the NLRB to ensure that that vote failed. And then she turns around and says, well, but look, see, the employees don't want a union. That's their whole strategy. They brought in labor union busting law firms. They interfered with traffic light patterns to try to keep drivers from interacting with picketers. They set up an illegal ballot box at the facility and then encouraged workers to turn their ballot into that box, which had cameras on it, right? So that's, I mean, you guys, all of this violates either law or principle, and, Amazon going all in to try to ensure that their employees couldn't unionize. We saw this also with Starbucks recently, and on and on. It's a trend, right? This is how this goes. So, while Amazon's treatment of workers during the pandemic from the More Perfect Union video is disturbing, I am encouraged to see that the NLRB is at least going to enforce the rules on the book, as inadequate as they may be and as favorable to big business as they may be. It's good to see that when Amazon oversteps to the degree that they did, that there at least is going to be another opportunity. We'll cover how that effort goes and what kind of tactics Amazon turns to this time, knowing that there may be some more scrutiny on their tactics. And I just want to note, you guys, not that I, with the way that politics have gone lately, expect anything to happen, but we need legislation that enforces unions, and so it's something like the PRO Act, except preferably even more robust, that enforces unions and applies a fair chance for employees who seek to unionize. So that is the situation with Amazon, and as I said, we'll continue covering that. And I do have a couple more clips here, you guys, from More Perfect Union. I hate to just kind of keep using their content, but it's so damn good, and I want to bring it to you guys. And so we have two more here to go over. The first one I'll show you is about Google.
Fired me and other vocal employee organizers, and they've gotten away with it for 2 years. Google's motto is, or at least used to be, "Don't be evil." But very shortly after I arrived there, I found out that they had been secretly working on a project to analyze drone footage for the US military called Project Maven. There were concerns that in some way that this work that people were doing to improve computer vision through the contract would lead to violence and death. To me, that didn't fit with those values.
I originally started working at Google quite a long time ago, and while I don't think things were ever perfect, I think there was kind of a genuine commitment to live up to don't be evil as much as possible. There was a lot of open discussion about anything that might take place, but in the last few years, things really changed, trying to kind of take a neutral stance on so-called political issues around women, around minorities, around the LGBTQ community, including, things like harassment on YouTube and reparative therapy apps in the App Store. There were also a lot of issues with harassment and retaliation when Andy Rubin was given $90 million to leave as part of being the perpetrator of sexual harassment. The company was trying more to bury these things than to do anything about them.
In early summer 2019, Customs and Border Protection, CBP, put out a request for information proposal looking for a company that could help them manage their cloud infrastructure. In that proposal, they listed their existing infrastructure, which included Google Cloud. For me personally, seeing the treatment that immigrants and refugees were getting by Border Patrol and by ICE, it was just completely inhumane and not something I felt like I could be any part of, even indirectly. I and several other workers banded together to ask Google to commit not to working with them in the future. We thought surely once they're aware of this, they wouldn't want to be associated with that kind of treatment of people. We released a petition and got over 1,000 signatures, but Google continued to insist that they would simply not work with the bad parts of CBP, as though they could be cleanly separated. Google management had been growing increasingly unhappy with worker-led petitions and actions, and with the CBP petition, they really started to crack down.
I had been looking at the calendars because a number of us were being censored trying to discuss some important issues. And the first thing that I saw when I looked at one of the calendars of one of the people who was doing the censorship directly was calendar entries with the names of people who I recognized as other people who'd been involved in organizing. It seemed like they were quite literally being checked up on. I started to wonder, how is this being coordinated? And we uncovered that they were hiring union-busting firms. The firm that they hired, IRI Consultants, has worked to help crush all sorts of union campaigns. They're infamous for helping large hospital systems defeat nurse unionization campaigns.
When a small amount of information made its way to Business Insider about Google's existing CBP projects, they interrogated myself as well as several other of the petition co-authors. None of us, of course, had leaked the information, but they were very clearly trying to intimidate us and discourage us from writing anything further or taking any further actions. They decided that what we were doing wasn't okay after all and fired us within, I believe, 15 minutes of each other.
Google fired me because I was standing up for myself and my coworkers. Google said they fired me because I accessed documents and calendars.
According to Google, I and several others were fired for violations of their data security policy, code of conduct, and several other written policies for supposedly leaking information publicly. None of us had shared anything publicly, and what we shared within Google was only information that was accessible to any employee who could use a search engine. And at Google, that's rather a lot of them. It was clear to all of us that the real reason was to punish us for our activism and discourage any future attempts at employee organizing.
Yes at Google was originally a mailing list run by workers for discussing workplace issues. When HR took it over, it stopped to be an effective tool for organizing. They pushed a Chrome extension to all of Google that would give you a little reminder if you tried to schedule a meeting with more than 100 people. This was very clearly in response to the organizing meetings that were taking place. It doesn't have to do anything other than make you feel watched by management to have an impact on your organizing. I added a change that popped up when you visited the internal community guidelines page or the IRI Consultants webpage, reminding you of your right to participate in protected concerted activity. A few weeks later, I was fired. Google claims they fired me for violating security policy. It doesn't matter what they actually say here. I didn't violate any security policy. The reason they fired me is plain and simply organizing.
I think it's very important for the NLRB to show that employees' rights to organize and to discuss their employment extends not just to obvious working conditions like sick days, but also to workers' rights to know what they're working on and not be forced to work on projects that are a huge ethical violation.
Immigration rights are a workplace issue. Climate change is a workplace issue. We all have an ability to affect that as workers.
We're going to push our case forward, and we're going to show them that just because they have, a big old-fashioned law firm with half a dozen lawyers and who knows how many other staff behind it that they're probably spending tens of thousands of dollars per day on, that a bunch of scrappy workers who have some principles can still not just fight in that space, but win.
More unsurprising, but outrageous behavior from giant corporations, right? We'll keep up on that story. I hope that suit is successful. And it's what I think surprises me more than anything, and it's one of those things that probably shouldn't because it's kind of predictable, is how explicit it is, you guys. Like, one would think that they would have to cover this up to some degree or another. It really seems like they can just put it right out there in the open, and there's not much pushback, right? So pertaining to this same story, I wanted to show you guys a piece here. This is in ARS Technica. Google hired union-busting consultants to convince employees, quote, unions suck. NLRB judge orders Google to shed light on its secret anti-union project. This is a piece from last week. For years, Google has attempted to kill employee-led unionization efforts under an initiative codenamed Project Vivian. In the words of one senior manager, Project Vivian existed to engage employees more positively and convince them that unions suck. Real positive messaging there, right? We want to engage you positively by telling you that what you're trying to do sucks. Fucking hilarious. Project Vivian appears to be Google's response to a surge in worker activism that began in 2018 when thousands of employees walked out in protest of the company's response to sexual harassment complaints. Months later, employees began pushing for improved working conditions for Google contractors and an end to contracts with U.S. government agencies involved in deportations and family separations. Two employees who helped organize the 2018 walkout later left the company saying they were facing retaliation. Ultimately, 5 employees were fired and 2 were disciplined. You heard from some of those employees. They filed a complaint with the National Labor Relations Board alleging that Google interfered with their law-protected rights to organize at the workplace. The NLRB agreed and filed a complaint against Google in December 2020. Google refused to settle, and the matter went to the NLRB's administrative court. Revelations about Project Vivian were made public in a ruling released late last week by an NLRB administrative law judge. In the scathing order, the judge, Paul Bogus, told Google to turn over hundreds of internal documents related to its anti-union efforts, his second such order. Bogus had previously ordered Google to hand over documents for review by a special master in camera, a process that allows another judge to look through them for confidential or sensitive information before they're made public. Okay. Many of the documents involve Google's work with IRI Consultants, a union-busting firm that the tech giant hired in late 2019. Google has so far refused to produce the documents, claiming that they are protected by attorney-client privilege or work product privilege. So that, you guys, that's a key mechanism in all of this. The reason they like to hire union-busting law firms is because they then can claim privilege. Right. So this isn't just a PR consultant. It's a legal representative, which allows them to then hide these interactions and call them privileged. And then the law firm can act on their behalf without such instruction being revealed or transparent. Right. So we'll keep up on this story as well, you guys. All these major corporations sort of conducting themselves in the same way when their employees choose to organize or unionize or strike or any action to try to improve their material well-being that the companies like to exploit. And we have one more for you here from More Perfect Union. Again, you guys, please go cover them. They're just fantastic stuff. As you guys can see, I can't even help but bring you a lot of their clips. This is about Red Lobster and how Red Lobster treats their employees. We'll watch it, come back and discuss.
Lobster workers are being forced to come to work sick during the pandemic.
And the timelines, he basically got COVID on Sunday. And by Tuesday, the girl and I were showing symptoms because we already hung out with him before we found out that he had symptoms and got the positive COVID test. So then we went to tell management, like, hey, I'm not coming in for my weekend shifts because, I've got the same symptoms as the roommate that has COVID. And they tried to fight us a lot with that. When I had to take off for getting COVID, I just didn't get paid anything. I was just off the clock.
We don't get sick pay. If we don't work, we don't get paid. The coworkers who've been in contact with a confirmed COVID-19 family member would still come to work. We live paycheck to paycheck. We can't sit at home without pay.
Red Lobster is one of the largest restaurant chains in the U.S., with about 50,000 employees across nearly 700 restaurants. Their restaurant staff don't receive paid sick leave, except where it's required by local law, even amid a public health crisis.
15 people have COVID, we never cleaned or closed.
Lack of sick pay gives workers an impossible choice: work sick or miss out on much needed wages. Researchers who surveyed Red Lobster employees last fall found that 63% of workers who reported being sick in the past month said that they had worked sick.
About 2/3 of workers who had an illness reported working sick. The option to take time off and not get paid is not really on the table for those workers.
Daniel Schneider helps oversee the Shift Project, which has surveyed over 90,000 service sector workers at large companies.
The pandemic really focused our attention on the importance of real access to paid sick leave. Red Lobster's provision of paid sick leave, according to their workers, really falls short relative to even the low rates of paid sick leave provision in the sector. So overall in the food service sector, about 30% of workers have access to paid sick leave. It's just about 12% for Red Lobster workers.
In some cases, Red Lobster workers said their manager demanded they work, despite knowing they were sick.
Managers let employees work sick and don't send them home. Managers also won't let an employee call out sick. They insist they come in unless they find a replacement.
And a lot of these have to do with the broader business practices of firms like Red Lobster, running a really low staffing model where workers are really dependent on getting hours from their managers. And so what we see there is that a large share of workers told us that they worked sick because they were responsible for finding someone to cover their shift and they couldn't find someone to cover their shift. Or that they didn't want to let their coworkers down because staffing was so low, if they don't show up, they know what that means for their coworkers' day.
Red Lobster's parent company reported $190 million in quarterly profits last fall. But Red Lobster pays its workers so little that missing a few shifts unpaid is not an option for many workers.
I was paid $8.25 an hour. I never got a pay raise.
I worked at Red Lobster from November of 2016 till July of 2018. I started off at $9.25 an hour, and I only got one raise through my time there, and I got bumped up to $9.60 an hour.
Of the hundreds of Red Lobster workers surveyed, 75% said it was difficult to pay all their bills in 2020 and 2021. 18% reported going hungry.
They felt like, they were getting overworked, underpaid, and it just seems like we were just almost like another number to them,
At the start of the pandemic, huge restaurant chains like Olive Garden began to offer paid sick leave after myself and other reporters started publishing horror stories from their employees about working sick. But Red Lobster hasn't shifted.
For Christmas time, they gave the employees that worked through the pandemic what we call a lighthouse glass, which is something we'll sell the guests for like $3.50, like a 16-ounce glass, with a red ribbon tied around it and a couple pieces of candy in the glass. Like they put off a sign during the pandemic that said "Thank you, heroes," and we got that lighthouse glass filled with candy, and that was it.
That's so classic, right? That's so classic. Oh, you're undercompensated and mistreated. Why don't we buy the employees a pizza? That's just so classic. Great work as always, you guys. And I've talked before about the food service. I happen to have quite a bit of experience there. I've worked in both fast food and in kitchens, and I've seen how awful customers can be, how awful management in these businesses can be. It's really just an awful industry, you guys. Like, even when I've had ownership that on a personal level I like and think genuinely mean well, the results in treatment for workers is often just, not often, always just inadequate. It's a shitty industry. We covered, I think it was More Perfect Union also that talked about the effort to increase the tip minimum wage in New York and rid of sub minimum wages in New York. I think that should happen everywhere. So it's an industry that's already exploitative and hard for workers. And then you add to it that a lot of the workers in the food industry understand that a substantial portion of their income is tip based, which means that they essentially have to let customers get away with inappropriate things and play along, because otherwise they're going to lose out on tips, and that means less income, right? So there's a myriad of reasons why this is a really shitty industry. Red Lobster, they're demonstrating some of the reasons why. And this is becoming a pattern that these businesses and firms try to get their workers to come in while sick. I covered, I don't remember if it was a week or 2 weeks ago, but how there are nurses being asked to come back into work while they're COVID positive. Some really outrageous stuff there, you guys, and Red Lobster participating in that conduct as well. Oh, just come into work. We know you're sick. That's fine. Our profits are more important than the immunocompromised person that might die because you give them a deadly virus. That's their incentive structure, right? So great work from More Perfect Union. They had even more videos than the 4 that I showed you this week. You guys go follow them and check out what they've been up to. The labor movement, incredibly critical, and one of the few ways that we can actually, make some headway in terms of fighting for a better society. Because if you hit them in the pocketbooks, that has more of an impact than most any other avenues of change, right? So really encourage everybody to, if you can, contribute to mutual aid funds for striking workers and support unionization efforts. If you have the time to go stand on a picket line and support those who are trying to organize around you in your community, I really encourage you all to do it. And hey, if I have viewers who are workers in a business that is not unionized, I really encourage you to take the steps to get there. That one Amazon employee talked about how their initial request was just for water and water breaks. And they realized when they made that request that they actually have the power. So as daunting as I know it may seem, I really encourage you to start talking to your coworkers about unionizing if you're currently in a workplace that is not unionized. And please just, as a customer, mention this stuff, you guys. What's the manager going to do? Throw you out of their store while you're trying to give them your money because you're telling their employees to unionize? I mean, seriously, mention it. When you're at the counter at some fast food restaurant or Starbucks or whatever the hell, I think the Starbucks is the example I gave last time because we were talking about the successful effort in Buffalo. Just say to the person as you're exchanging money and whatnot, checking out, just say, hey, just so you know, there've been some successful unionization efforts around. You guys might want to consider it. You'll get better treatment and better compensation. In any way that you can spread the message, in any way that you can support the labor movement, I encourage my audience to do so.